The moment I set foot on Zirian, I had no idea I was about to uncover an ancient secret that could change the fate of an entire world. A long-forgotten ruin, a long-lost queen resurrected after centuries, and a war between species buried deep in the past. But when I accidentally triggered a mysterious mechanism, I awakened something that no one could control. Suddenly, I wasn't just an archaeologist. I was the only one who could save Zirian from destruction, and it all started when I unknowingly touched a secret that no one ever expected. But can I truly become the protector of this planet, or will I just be another lost soul in an ancient battle? If you enjoyed this, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more epic stories like this. The jungle of Zirian was a living, breathing entity, its canopy a tapestry of emerald and gold, woven with vines as thick as a man's arm. Sunlight filtered through the leaves in dappled patterns, casting shadows that danced with every breath of wind. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flowers and the distant roar of waterfalls, a symphony of life that filled Justin's senses as he hacked his way through the undergrowth. He had been on Zirian for 3 weeks, chasing whispers of ancient ruins buried deep within the jungle. As an archaeologist, he was drawn to the unknown, the thrill of discovery coursing through his veins like a drug. Zirian was uncharted territory, a planet teeming with life and mystery, and Justin was determined to uncover its secrets. His scanner beeped insistently, indicating a strong energy signature ahead. Justin's heart raced as he pushed forward, sweat trickling down his brow. The jungle seemed to close in around him, the trees whispering secrets in a language he couldn't understand. But he pressed on, driven by curiosity and the promise of something extraordinary. Finally, he stumbled upon a clearing, and there, rising from the earth like a monolith, was a structure unlike anything he had ever seen. It was made of stone, yet it pulsed with a faint, otherworldly light. Vines and moss clung to its surface, but beneath the greenery, Justin could see intricate carvings, symbols that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them. "This is it," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the jungle's cacophony. "The heart of Zirian." He approached cautiously, his scanner humming in his hand. The energy readings were off the charts, suggesting technology far beyond anything human. As he circled the structure, he found a door, sealed with what appeared to be a biological lock. A depression in the center glowed softly, inviting him to place his hand upon it. Justin hesitated. He knew that tampering with alien technology could be dangerous, but the allure was too strong. With a deep breath, he pressed his palm against the lock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a soft hum filled the air, and the door began to slide open, revealing a passageway bathed in an eerie blue light. Justin stepped inside, his eyes adjusting to the dimness. The walls were smooth, adorned with more of those shifting symbols. At the end of the corridor was another door, already ajar. He pushed it open and gasped. The room was vast, with a high ceiling lost in shadow. In the center stood a pod, transparent and filled with a shimmering liquid. Inside, a figure floated, motionless. As Justin approached, he saw that it was a woman, her skin a deep purple, almost iridescent under the room's light. Her hair was silver, flowing around her like a halo, and her features were delicate, almost ethereal. She was beautiful, in a way that was both familiar and alien. Justin felt a strange pull towards her, as if he had known her in another life. He reached out, touching the pod's surface. It was warm, and as his fingers made contact, the liquid began to drain away. The woman's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises the color of emeralds. She looked at him, confusion giving way to recognition. "Kale," she whispered, her voice like music. "You've returned." Justin shook his head. "I'm not Kale. My name is Justin. I'm from Earth." The woman frowned, sitting up slowly. The liquid had completely drained, and she stepped out of the pod, her movements graceful despite her long slumber. She was tall, her purple skin glistening, and she wore a simple garment that seemed to be part of her body, shifting with her every move. "You look like him," she said, her voice stronger now. But your energy is different. Who are you, really? I'm an archaeologist, Justin explained. I came to Zirian to study its ruins. I didn't mean to disturb you. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I am Zariah, the last queen of Zirian. This planet has been in stasis for centuries, waiting for the return of its guardian. I thought you were Kale, my consort, but perhaps you were something else. Before Justin could respond, the ground shook and alarms blared through the chamber. Red lights flashed, and a mechanical voice echoed around them. Intruder alert. Unauthorized access detected. Zariah's eyes widened. The defense systems are activating. We need to leave now. She grabbed Justin's hand and pulled him toward a side passage. Behind them, drones emerged from hidden compartments in the walls, their weapons powering up. They ran, the drones firing energy bolts that scorched the walls around them. Justin's heart pounded as they dodged and weaved through the corridors, Zariah leading the way with unerring precision. Finally, they burst out into the jungle, the drones hesitating at the threshold of the temple. Zariah didn't stop, pulling Justin deeper into the undergrowth until they were well away from the structure. Panting, they collapsed against a tree. Justin looked at Zariah, her chest heaving, her skin still glowing faintly. What was that? He asked. The temple's guardians, she replied. They were programmed to protect Nexus, the heart of Zirian. But they shouldn't have attacked you. Unless what? Justin prompted. Unless they don't recognize you as the guardian, Zariah said thoughtfully. Which means we need to find out why Nexus chose you and what it expects from you. Justin ran a hand through his hair, still trying to process everything. This is insane. I'm just an archaeologist. I don't know anything about being a guardian. Zariah smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. Sometimes, destiny chooses us, whether we're ready or not. But you're not alone, Justin. I'll help you understand your role here. As they sat there, catching their breath, Justin felt a strange sense of connection to this alien woman. Despite the danger, despite the confusion, he knew that his life had changed forever. And somehow, he was okay with that. After a moment, Zariah stood up, offering her hand to Justin. Come, we need to find shelter. The jungle isn't safe at night. Justin took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin against his. It was soft, yet strong, and he couldn't help but notice how her fingers lingered on his for a second longer than necessary. They walked through the jungle, Zariah leading the way with confidence. She seemed to know every path, every hidden trail, as if she had walked them 1,000 times before. How long were you in that pod? Justin asked, breaking the silence. Centuries, Zariah replied. Time moves differently in stasis. When I was placed there, Zirian was on the brink of destruction. Kale and I activated Nexus to preserve our knowledge and wait for a time when we could rebuild. And Kale, Justin ventured. Zariah's expression darkened. He didn't make it into stasis. He stayed behind to ensure I was safe to activate the final protocols. I haven't seen him since. I'm sorry, Justin said softly. She shook her head. It was his choice. He believed in the future of Zirian, even if he couldn't be part of it. They came to a small clearing, where a waterfall cascaded into a crystal-clear pool. Zariah stopped, looking at the water with longing. I used to come here often, she said. It was my sanctuary. Justin watched as she knelt by the pool, dipping her hands into the water. The liquid seemed to shimmer around her fingers, as if responding to her touch. Zirian is alive, she explained. Every part of it is connected, from the smallest insect to the largest tree. Nexus is the heart, but the planet itself is the soul. Justin sat down beside her, fascinated. It's beautiful. I've never seen anything like it. Zariah turned to him, her eyes searching his. You're different from Kale, but there's something about you, something that feels familiar. Justin felt a flush creep up his neck. I don't know what to say. I'm just me. She smiled, a genuine, warm smile that made his heart skip a beat. And that's enough. As the sun began to set, casting the jungle in hues of gold and purple, they sat together by the pool, sharing stories of their pasts. Justin told her about Earth, about his love for exploration and discovery. Zariah spoke of Zirian's golden age, of peace and prosperity that seemed almost mythical. When night fell, they built a small fire, the flames dancing in Zariah's emerald eyes. She looked at him, her expression soft. "Thank you, Justin," she said, "for waking me, for being here." He reached out, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "I think I'm the one who should be thanking you. You've shown me a world I never knew existed." Their hands touched, and for a moment, time stood still. The jungle around them faded, leaving only the two of them, connected by something deeper than words. But then, a distant roar broke the spell, reminding them of the dangers that still lurked in the shadows. "We should rest," Zariah said, standing up. "Tomorrow, we need to return to the temple and find out why Nexus chose you." Justin nodded, though part of him wished they could stay in this moment forever. As they settled down for the night, he couldn't help but feel that his life had taken a turn he never expected, and that Zariah was at the center of it all. The first light of dawn filtered through the dense canopy of Zirian's jungle, casting a golden glow over the clearing where Justin and Zariah had spent the night. The air was alive with the hum of unseen insects and the distant trill of alien birds. But beneath it all was something new, a faint vibration, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Justin stirred, his back stiff from sleeping on the mossy ground, and opened his eyes to find Zariah already awake, her silhouette framed by the rising sun. Her silver hair caught the light like a halo, and her purple skin shimmered faintly, as if infused with the morning's warmth. She turned to him, her emerald eyes sharp with purpose. "Did you feel it?" she asked, her voice low but urgent. "The pulse. It's Nexus. The city is waking." Justin sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "I thought it was just my imagination," he admitted. "But yeah, there's something different. Like the air's charged." Zariah nodded, standing with a fluid grace that made Justin's breath catch. "We need to return to the temple. Nexus chose you for a reason, Justin. We have to find out why." He hesitated, the memory of the drone's energy bolts still fresh. "But are you sure it's safe? Those defenses didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat." Her lips curved into a small, reassuring smile. "The temple is our only lead. Besides, I'll be with you. We'll face whatever comes together." Her confidence steadied him, and he nodded. They gathered their meager supplies, a scanner, a knife, and a small pack, and set off through the jungle. The path was different now, transformed overnight. Flowers that had been dull green the day before glowed softly like living lanterns, their petals pulsing with bioluminescent light. Trees seemed taller, their branches weaving tighter, as if the forest itself was responding to the city's revival. "Do you think this is all because of Nexus?" Justin asked, stepping over a root that seemed to shift slightly under his foot. Zariah's gaze swept the surroundings, her expression a mix of awe and caution. "Yes, when Nexus awakens, it doesn't just revive the city. It breathes life into the entire planet. Zirian is a single organism, connected from root to star." Justin marveled at her words, his archaeologist's mind racing. "That's incredible. I've studied ruins across a dozen worlds, but nothing like this." She glanced at him, her eyes softening. "You're not just studying this time, Justin. You're part of it." Their conversation was cut short by a rustle in the undergrowth. Justin tensed, but Zariah raised a hand, her posture relaxed. A small creature darted out, a forest sprite no bigger than a cat, with translucent wings and eyes like glowing coals. It chirped, circling Zariah before vanishing back into the foliage. "They're harmless," she said, chuckling. "They're drawn to Nexus's energy. A good sign. It means the planet trusts us." Justin grinned, her laughter easing his nerves. "I'll take any good signs I can get." They continued, the temple's silhouette soon looming ahead, its stone surface now pulsing with veins of light. The air grew heavier, charged with an electric hum that made Justin's skin tingle. As they approached the entrance, the door slid open without resistance, as if expecting them. Inside, the temple was transformed. The cold, sterile halls of yesterday were gone, replaced by a warm, golden light that seemed to flow like liquid along the walls. Panels of organic material pulsed softly, and holographic displays danced like fireflies, projecting images of Zirian's past. Cities of towering spires, skies filled with ships, and beings of every shape united in harmony. Justin stopped, awestruck. "It's alive," he breathed. Zoraya's hand brushed his arm, her touch warm and grounding. "This is Nexus's heart. It's been waiting for you." Before he could respond, a deep, resonant voice filled the chamber. "Welcome, Justin of Earth." A hologram flickered into existence, a humanoid figure made of light, its features indistinct but commanding. "I am Nexus, the guardian of Zirian's legacy. Your genetic code matches that of the original protectors. You have been chosen to lead." Justin's mouth went dry. "Chosen? I'm not a leader. I'm just an archaeologist." The hologram's light pulsed. "You doubt your worth, yet you stand here, having awakened me. To unlock Zirian's full potential, you must pass the trial of awakening." Zoraya's eyes widened. "The trial? It hasn't been used since Kale's time." "What's the trial?" Justin asked, his voice tight. Nexus's voice was calm, but unyielding. "A test of heart and will. It will reveal whether you are worthy to wield my power. Refuse, and Zirian remains dormant. Accept, and you may shape its future." Justin looked at Zoraya, seeking her guidance. Her expression was steady, but her eyes held a flicker of worry. "It's your choice, Justin," she said softly. "But I believe in you." Her words stirred something in him, a spark of courage he hadn't known he possessed. He squared his shoulders. "All right, I'll do it." Nexus's hologram nodded. "Step forward." A section of the floor glowed, and Justin moved toward it, his heart pounding. As he stood in the light, the world around him dissolved. The temple vanished, replaced by a void of endless black, the air thick with silence broken only by the faint echo of his own breathing. "Where am I?" he called, his voice swallowed by the darkness. A scene materialized before him. His childhood home on Earth, the cramped apartment where his parents had struggled to make ends meet. His father's voice rang out, sharp with disappointment. "You're wasting your life chasing dreams, Justin. You'll never amount to anything." Justin's chest tightened. "That's not true," he whispered. "I've made something of myself." The scene shifted, and now he saw Zoraya, her body broken and lifeless on the jungle floor, her emerald eyes dull. A shadowy figure loomed over her, its laughter cold. "You failed her," it taunted. "You're no guardian." "No!" Justin shouted, lunging forward, but the figure dissolved. His knees buckled, fear clawing at his heart. "I won't let that happen." Another vision appeared, a mirror reflecting his own face, but older, lined with regret. "You're not enough," his reflection said. "You never were." Justin clenched his fists, anger rising. "I am enough. I choose to be here. I choose to protect Zirian." The void trembled, and the visions shattered like glass. Light flooded the space, and Justin found himself back in the temple, gasping for breath. Zoraya was at his side, her hands gripping his shoulders, her eyes wide with relief. "You did it," she said, her voice trembling. "You passed the trial." Nexus's hologram reappeared, its light brighter now. "You have faced your fears and chosen your path. You are worthy, Justin of Earth. Zirian's power is yours to command." Justin's legs felt weak, but Zoraya's presence steadied him. "What does that mean?" he asked. "What do I do now?" Nexus's voice softened. "The city awakens, but dangers remain. Zirian's enemies will sense its revival. You must lead, protect, and rebuild. The Queen will guide you." Zoraya squeezed his hand, her touch a lifeline. "We'll do it together," she promised. The hologram faded, and the temple's walls pulsed with new energy. Panels opened, revealing sleek devices, tools, weapons, and interfaces that glowed with purpose. Justin picked up a small, curved device, its surface warm and responsive to his touch. "It's like it was made for me," he said, turning to Zoraya. Her smile was radiant, her purple skin catching the light in a way that made his heart skip. "It was. Nexus knew you were coming." They stepped out of the chamber into a grand hall, where the city's awakening was even more evident. The ceiling arched high, adorned with mosaics that shimmered like stars. Below, a holographic map of Zirian flickered to life, showing sprawling districts now humming with faint activity. "This is just the beginning," Zariah said, her voice filled with hope. "But it won't be easy. The Zorons, an old enemy, may already know we're here." Justin nodded, the weight of his new role settling on his shoulders. "Then we'll face them, together." Zariah moved closer, her hand brushing his cheek. "You're not what I expected, Justin," she said softly. "But I'm glad it's you." Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. Justin's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining, and he felt a surge of warmth that chased away his doubts. He wanted to say something, to tell her how her faith in him made him feel invincible, but words failed him. Instead, he leaned in, and she met him halfway, their foreheads touching in a silent promise. The city's hum seemed to echo their connection, a rhythm that bound them to each other and to Zirian. As they pulled back, Zariah's gaze was fierce. "Come," she said. "There's more to see, and time is short." They moved deeper into the hall, the city's light guiding their way, unaware of the shadows stirring beyond the jungle, drawn by the pulse of a world reborn. The jungle of Zirian pulsed with an electric hum, its bioluminescent flowers casting eerie shadows as Justin and Zariah moved swiftly through the undergrowth. The city's awakening had sent ripples across the planet, and now danger was closing in. Zariah's emerald eyes scanned the horizon, her purple skin shimmering under the dappled sunlight. Justin gripped the sleek energy baton Nexus had given him, its surface warm against his palm, a reminder of the role he'd barely begun to understand. "We're not alone," Zariah whispered, her voice taut. She pointed to a ridge where the trees parted, revealing glints of metal in the distance. "Zorons. They've tracked the energy surge from Nexus." Justin's heart raced. "Zorons? The enemies you mentioned?" She nodded, her silver hair catching the light like liquid starshine. "A warrior race, relentless and cunning. They've coveted Zirian's technology since the Great War. If they reach the city, they'll tear it apart." He swallowed hard, the weight of the baton grounding him. "How many are we talking about?" "Too many for us to outrun," she said, her gaze locking onto his. "But we can fight. The city's defenses are waking, and you're the key to activating them." Justin felt a surge of doubt, but Zariah's unwavering confidence steadied him. "All right, tell me what to do." She gestured toward a narrow path leading back to the temple. "We need to reach the control spire. Nexus can activate the perimeter shields, but it'll take time. We have to hold them off until then." They sprinted through the jungle, the air thick with the scent of ozone and blooming vines. The hum of Nexus grew louder, vibrating through the earth, but so did the distant roar of engines. The Zorons were closing in, their sleek, insect-like skiffs slicing through the canopy above, their hulls glinting like polished obsidian. As they neared the temple, the ground shook and a skiff crashed through the trees, landing in a clearing ahead. Its ramp lowered, and 6 Zorons emerged, tall, sinewy figures with gray, scale-like skin and eyes like burning coals. They carried jagged energy rifles, their movements precise and predatory. Zariah shoved Justin behind a tree, her hand lingering on his arm. "Stay low," she hissed. "They're trained to kill without hesitation." Justin peeked out, his pulse hammering. The Zorons fanned out, their leader, a towering figure with a scarred face, barking orders in a guttural tongue. "Find a source," he snarled. "The city's heart is ours." Zariah's eyes narrowed, and she raised her hand, energy crackling from her fingertips. "Not today," she muttered. She stepped out, unleashing a bolt of light that struck the leader's chest, sending him staggering. The Zorons retaliated instantly, their rifles spitting arcs of blue fire. Justin ducked as a bolt scorched the tree above him, showering him with sparks. Zariah moved like a dancer, weaving through the barrage, her energy blasts forcing the Zorons to scatter. Justin gripped his baton, its core glowing brighter as he activated it. "I'm not sitting this out," he said, stepping into the fray. He swung the baton, catching a Zoran in the side. The weapon hummed, releasing a shockwave that sent the warrior sprawling. Zoraya shot him a glance, half surprised, half approving. "Not bad, Earthman," she called, dodging another blast. "Aim for their weapons." They fought in tandem, Zoraya's precision complementing Justin's raw determination. He parried a Zoran strike, the baton clashing against a blade that sparked with energy. Sweat stung his eyes, but he pressed on, driven by the need to protect Zoraya and the city. The leader recovered, his scarred face twisting with rage. "You dare challenge us, human," he roared, leveling his rifle at Justin. Before Justin could react, Zoraya leaped in front of him, her energy shield flaring to deflect the blast. The force knocked her back, and she stumbled, blood trickling from a cut on her arm. "Zoraya!" Justin shouted, rage surging through him. He charged the leader, swinging the baton with all his strength. The blow connected, shattering the Zoran's rifle and sending him crashing to the ground. Zoraya regained her footing, her breath ragged but her eyes fierce. "We need to move," she said. "More are coming." They ran toward the temple, the remaining Zorans in pursuit. The structure loomed ahead, its walls now alive with pulsing light, as if urging them forward. They'd burst through the entrance, slamming the door shut behind them. The hum of Nexus filled the air, louder now, almost deafening. Inside, the control spire rose from the center of a vast chamber, a column of organic metal that shimmered with holographic displays. Zoraya raced to a console, her fingers flying over the glowing interface. "Nexus, activate the perimeter shields," she commanded. The AI's voice resonated through the chamber. "Authorization required. The Guardian must initiate the sequence." Justin stepped forward, his hand trembling as he placed it on the console. The surface warmed under his touch, and a holographic map of the city flickered to life, showing red dots, Zoran forces, converging on their position. "Justin," Zoraya said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Focus. You can do this." He closed his eyes, willing the system to respond. A jolt of energy surged through him, and the map pulsed green as the shields began to activate. Outside, a low whine signaled the barriers rising, cutting off the Zoran's advance. But the victory was short-lived. The temple shook as an explosion rocked the outer walls. Zoraya's console sparked, and she cursed under her breath. "They're using breaching charges. The shields won't hold long." Justin scanned the chamber, spotting a rack of energy lances mounted on the wall. "Then we make a stand here," he said, grabbing one and tossing another to Zoraya. She caught it, her eyes meeting his. "You're braver than you think," she said, a hint of pride in her voice. They positioned themselves at the chamber's entrance, the lances humming in their hands. The door groaned under the Zoran's assault, its surface buckling. With a final blast, it gave way, and the warriors poured in, their rifles blazing. Justin and Zoraya fought back to back, their movements synchronized. He thrust his lance, disarming a Zoran, while Zoraya's energy blasts lit up the chamber like a storm. The air was thick with the smell of scorched metal and the crackle of energy, but they held their ground, each strike fueled by their shared resolve. Amid the chaos, Justin took a hit to the shoulder, the energy bolt searing his skin. He grunted, dropping to one knee, but Zoraya was there in an instant, her shield flaring to protect him. "Stay with me," she urged, her voice cutting through the pain. He forced himself up, adrenaline dulling the agony. "Not going anywhere," he gasped, swinging his lance to fend off another attacker. The Zorans were relentless, but the shields outside finally stabilized, cutting off their reinforcements. The tide turned, and the remaining warriors began to falter. Zoraya seized the moment, unleashing a wave of energy that knocked the last Zorans back, their bodies slumping against the walls. Panting, they lowered their weapons, the chamber falling silent except for the hum of Nexus. Justin's shoulder throbbed, but he barely noticed, his eyes fixed on Zoraya. Blood stained her arm, and her silver hair was matted with sweat. But she stood tall, her presence commanding. "You're hurt," he said, stepping closer. Without thinking, he reached out, his fingers brushing the cut on her arm. Her skin was warm, softer than he expected, and she didn't pull away. "So are you," she replied, her gaze dropping to his shoulder. She tore a strip from her garment, wrapping it around his wound with practiced care. Her fingers lingered, and their eyes met, the air between them charged with something deeper than the battle's aftermath. "I thought I'd lose you out there," Justin admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Zoraya's lips parted, and for a moment, she looked vulnerable. "I thought the same," she said. "But you fought like a guardian, like you belong here." Their faces were inches apart, and Justin felt the pull of her presence, like gravity drawing him in. He wanted to close the distance, to feel her warmth against him, but the hum of Nexus broke the spell, its voice echoing once more. Perimeter shields fully engaged. Hostile forces repelled. The city is secure for now. Zoraya stepped back, her expression shifting to determination. "This was only the first wave," she said. "The Zorons will regroup. We need to prepare." Justin nodded, though his mind lingered on the moment they'd shared. "What's next?" She gestured to the console, where new holographic displays flickered. "Nexus has unlocked defensive protocols. We can arm the city, train its systems to recognize you fully. But it'll take time." He looked at her, the pain in his shoulder fading under the weight of her trust. "Then let's get to work." They moved to the console, side by side, their hands brushing as they activated the systems. The city's light pulsed around them, a living testament to their survival, and Justin felt a spark of hope. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, their bond forged in the heat of battle and the quiet promise of something more. As they worked, the temple's walls glowed brighter, and the hum of Nexus seemed to sing, a melody of rebirth that echoed through the jungle beyond. The temple's grand hall shimmered with a soft, amber glow, its organic walls pulsing like a living heartbeat. Justin stood before a holographic console, its surface alive with streams of alien glyphs that danced like fireflies. Zoraya was at his side, her purple skin catching the light in iridescent waves, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and the faint hum of Nexus, the ancient AI that had bound their fates to Zirion's revival. After repelling the Zorons, they had secured the city's perimeter, but questions lingered. Why had Nexus chosen Justin? And who was Kale, the guardian Zoraya believed he resembled? "We need answers," Zoraya said, her emerald eyes fixed on the console. Her voice was steady, but a tremor of emotion betrayed her. "Nexus holds the records of Zirion's past. If we're to understand your role, we must uncover the truth about Kale." Justin nodded, his fingers hovering over the console. The pain in his shoulder from the Zoron battle had dulled to a throb, but his mind was restless. "Let's do it. I need to know why I'm here, and why you thought I was him." Zoraya's gaze softened, and she placed a hand on his arm, her touch warm and fleeting. "Kale was everything to me. If Nexus sees him in you, there's a reason." She activated the console, and a holographic projection flared to life, filling the hall with images of Zirion's golden age. Towering spires pierced the clouds, their surfaces woven with bioluminescent vines. Ships glided through the skies, and beings of countless forms walked together in harmony. The scene shifted, focusing on a figure, a tall man with striking features, his eyes fierce yet kind, his presence commanding. Justin's breath caught. The resemblance was uncanny, like staring into a mirror from another life. "That's Kale," Zoraya whispered, her voice thick with memory. "The last guardian before the Great War." The hologram transitioned, showing Kale standing before a council of elders, his voice resonating as he spoke of peace. "Zirion must remain a beacon of unity," he declared. "We cannot let war divide us." The crowd roared in approval, but Justin noticed Zoraya's expression darken, her hands clenching at her sides. "What happened?" he asked gently. She didn't answer immediately, her eyes locked on the projection. The scene changed again, now depicting a battlefield strewn with wreckage. Kale fought at the forefront, wielding an energy lance with deadly precision, but his forces were overwhelmed. A shadowy figure emerged, a Zoran warlord, his scarred face twisted with malice. Kale charged, but the warlord's weapon struck true, and Kale fell, his body crumpling to the ground. Zariah turned away, her shoulders trembling. "I thought he betrayed us," she said, her voice barely audible. "The Zorons claim Kale turned against Zirian, that he sabotaged our defenses. I ordered his execution." Justin's heart sank. He reached out, hesitating before resting a hand on her shoulder. "You didn't know?" She shook her head, tears glinting in her eyes. "I should have trusted him. The Zorons manipulated the truth, used their tech to forge evidence. By the time I realized, it was too late." The hologram flickered, and Kale's voice filled the hall, a recorded message from his final moments. "Zariah, my love," he said, his tone calm despite the chaos around him. "If you're hearing this, I'm gone. The Zorons will come for Nexus, but you must protect it. Trust in the one who awakens you. They are our hope." Zariah's knees buckled, and Justin caught her, his arms steadying her as she leaned into him. Her warmth pressed against his chest, and for a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of Kale's words hanging between them. "He knew," she whispered. "He knew someone like you would come." Justin's throat tightened. "I'm not him, Zariah. I can't replace what you lost." She pulled back, her eyes searching his. "I know, but you're here, Justin. Nexus chose you, and I'm starting to see why." Their moment was interrupted by Nexus's voice, resonant and clear. "The Guardian's message is complete. Justin of Earth, your genetic signature aligns with Kale's, but you are not his reincarnation. You are a new protector, chosen for your heart and will." Justin frowned, processing the revelation. "So I'm not Kale, but I'm connected to him somehow?" Nexus's hologram shimmered, displaying a double helix of DNA strands. "Your lineage shares a distant echo of Zirian's creators. This resonance allows you to interface with my systems, as Kale did." Zariah's expression shifted to determination. "Then you're exactly what we need. Kale's legacy lives in you, Justin, but it's your strength that will shape our future." He looked at her, the intensity of her gaze stirring something deep within him. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted, "but I won't let you down." Her lips curved into a faint smile, and she stepped closer, her hand brushing his cheek. "You haven't yet," she said softly. Her touch sent a shiver through him, and he fought the urge to pull her closer, to lose himself in the warmth of her presence. They turned back to the console, delving deeper into Nexus's archives. The holograms revealed more about the Great War, how the Zorons had exploited Zirian's neutrality, sowing discord to weaken its defenses. Kale had discovered their plan, but his warnings came too late. He had sacrificed himself to activate Nexus's stasis protocols, ensuring the city could one day be reborn. As they watched, a new hologram appeared, a blueprint of Nexus's core, a massive chamber beneath the temple. "The heart of Zirian," Nexus intoned. "It holds the power to fully restore the city, but it is vulnerable until the Guardian claims it." Justin's pulse quickened. "So we need to secure this heart before the Zorons do." Zariah nodded, her jaw set. "They'll come for it. We stopped their first wave, but they're not done. We need to move quickly." They navigated the console, downloading schematics and defensive protocols. Justin's fingers moved with surprising ease, as if Nexus was guiding him. Zariah worked beside him, her focus unwavering, but their proximity was electric. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same panel, and she paused, her breath catching. "Sorry," Justin said, though he wasn't sure he meant it. She smiled, a spark of mischief in her eyes. "Don't be." The moment lingered, charged with unspoken possibilities, until Nexus's voice broke the silence. "Warning, energy signatures detected beyond the perimeter. Zoran forces are mobilizing." Zariah's expression hardened. "They're faster than I thought. We need to fortify the city now." Justin activated a sequence on the console, and the temple trembled as new defenses came online. Turrets rising from hidden compartments, shields reinforcing the outer walls. The holographic map showed the Zoran forces gathering at the jungle's edge, their numbers daunting. "We can't fight them all," Justin said, his voice tight. "Not like this." Zoraya's hand found his, her grip firm. "We don't have to. Nexus's defenses are strong, but we need to buy time to reach the heart. If we secure it, the city will be untouchable." He squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her resolve. "Then let's make a plan. Hit them hard, keep them off balance." Her eyes gleamed with approval. Spoken like a guardian. They moved to a tactical display, plotting their next steps. Zoraya pointed out weak points in the Zoran formation, her knowledge of their tactics sharp from centuries past. Justin added insights from his studies of Earth's guerrilla warfare, suggesting ambushes to disrupt their advance. As they worked, the temple's light seemed to pulse in rhythm with their determination. Zoraya leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his, and Justin felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the console's glow. He glanced at her, catching the way her lips parted slightly, as if she felt it too. "Justin," she said, her voice low, "whatever happens, I'm glad you're the one standing here." He met her gaze, his heart pounding. "I wouldn't want anyone else by my side." Their hands lingered on the console, fingers intertwined, and for a moment, the looming threat faded. The air between them crackled, and Justin leaned in, drawn by the pull of her presence. Zoraya's breath hitched, her eyes flickering to his lips, but before they could close the distance, the temple shook with a distant explosion. Zoraya pulled back, her expression torn between duty and desire. "They're here," she said. "We need to move." Justin nodded, his resolve hardening. "Let's protect this city. For Kale. For us." They armed themselves with energy lances and stepped toward the hall's exit, the weight of their shared purpose binding them closer. The temple's walls glowed brighter, as if Nexus itself was urging them forward, ready to face the storm that awaited beyond. The temple's war room buzzed with tension, its bioluminescent walls casting a soft, azure glow over the holographic map of Zirian. Justin stood at the center, his hands gripping the edge of the console, the weight of his new role pressing against him like the planet's humid air. Zoraya was beside him, her purple skin shimmering under the light, her emerald eyes scanning the map with fierce determination. The Zoran's failed assault had only delayed the inevitable. Now, new threats loomed, not just from outside, but within. The city's awakening had drawn the attention of Zirian's scattered factions, and they were converging on the temple, each with their own agenda. The map pulsed, showing clusters of energy signatures at the city's edges, representatives from 3 major factions. The Zorons, now regrouping. The Illyrians, a scholarly race with translucent skin and a knack for diplomacy. And the Kroth, a nomadic tribe of hulking warriors with obsidian hides. Nexus's voice echoed through the chamber, calm but insistent. "The factions seek control of the heart of Zirian. Guardian, you must unify them or face division and ruin." Justin's jaw tightened. "Unify them? Half of them want to kill us, and the other half probably wants to dissect me." Zoraya's hand brushed his, her touch a quiet anchor. "You faced worse," she said, her voice low and steady. "You led us against the Zorons. You can lead them now." Her faith steadied him, but doubt gnawed at his core. He was an archaeologist, not a diplomat. Yet, as he looked into her eyes, he felt a spark of resolve. "All right," he said, "let's meet them, but we do this on our terms." They prepared the temple's great hall for the summit, its towering arches now alive with cascading light that mimicked a starry sky. Nexus activated protocol drones, sleek, orb-like machines that floated silently, projecting a sense of authority. Justin donned a ceremonial tunic from the archives, its fabric lightweight but regal, while Zoraya wore a flowing robe that accentuated her curves, her silver hair braided with glowing threads. She caught him staring and raised an eyebrow, a playful smirk tugging at her lips. "Focus, Guardian," she teased, her voice warm with affection. He grinned, heat creeping up his neck, just appreciating the view. Her laughter was a melody, but it faded as the first faction arrived. The Illyrians entered first, their leader, a willowy figure named Lyrian, gliding forward with an air of quiet confidence. Her translucent skin shimmered like glass, revealing faint veins of light beneath. "We seek knowledge," she said, her voice like wind chimes. "Nexus's archives could restore our lost sciences. We offer alliance, but only if you prove worthy." Before Justin could respond, the Croth stormed in, their leader, Gorith, a mountain of muscle with eyes like burning embers. His voice boomed, shaking the hall. "Zirian belongs to the strong. Prove your might, human, or we claim the heart ourselves." The Zorons arrived last, their scarred leader, Varkes, sneering as he surveyed the room. "You've delayed us once," he growled, his gray scales glinting. "But the heart will be ours. Submit, or we burn this city to ash." Tension crackled like static, the factions' gazes locked on Justin. He felt Zoraya's presence beside him, her shoulder brushing his, and drew strength from it. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "Zirian isn't a prize to be claimed. It's a legacy. Nexus chose me to protect it, not to hand it over. If you want a future here, we work together." Gorith laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "A human leading us? You're no warrior." Justin held his ground, his eyes meeting Gorith's. "I don't need to be. I've fought Zorons, survived Nexus's trials, and I'm still standing. Strength isn't just muscle, it's will. And I'm not backing down." Lyrian tilted her head, intrigued. "Bold words, but can you deliver? The Illyrians require proof of your connection to Nexus." Varkes sneered, his hand resting on his energy blade. "Words mean nothing. Fight me, human, and prove your claim." Zoraya stepped forward, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Enough. Justin is the guardian, chosen by Nexus. Challenge him, and you challenge Zirian itself." Her words silenced the room, but the tension remained. Justin knew he had to act before the summit collapsed into violence. He turned to the holographic map, activating a display of the city's defenses. "Look," he said, pointing to the glowing nodes. "The Zorons are massing for another attack. If we fight each other, they win. Nexus can protect us, but only if we unite." Lyrian's eyes narrowed, studying the map. "Your strategy is sound, but trust is earned. Show us Nexus's power." Justin exchanged a glance with Zoraya, who nodded subtly. He placed his hand on the console, and Nexus responded, its voice resonating. "Guardian, demonstrate your authority." The floor vibrated, and a hidden panel opened, revealing a crystalline orb pulsing with energy. Justin approached it, feeling its warmth radiate through him. As he touched it, the hall's lights flared, and a holographic projection of Zirian's heart appeared, a massive chamber glowing with untapped power. The factions gasped, their skepticism wavering. Gorith's eyes widened, but he crossed his arms. "Impressive, but can you wield it in battle?" Justin's mind raced, recalling tactics from Earth's history. "I don't need to fight you to prove it," he said. "The Croth value strength, right? Help us fortify the city, and you'll have a place here. The Illyrians want knowledge. Join us, and Nexus's archives are yours." The Zorons, he turned to Varkes, his voice hardening. "You can fight us and lose, or ally with us and share the victory." Varkes' lip curled, but Lyrian spoke first. "The Illyrians will consider your offer, Guardian. Show us results, and we are yours." Gorith grunted, his gaze lingering on the orb. "The Croth will fight for now, but betray us, human, and you'll answer to me." Varkes remained silent, his eyes burning with resentment, but he didn't challenge Justin further. The summit adjourned, the factions agreeing to a temporary truce to prepare for the Zoran assault. As they dispersed, Justin felt the weight of their expectations, but Zoraya's presence grounded him. "You did it," she said, her voice soft as they stood alone in the hall. "You turned enemies into allies." He shook his head, exhaling. "Barely. There's still one wrong move from turning on us." She stepped closer, her hand resting on his chest, her touch sending a jolt through him. "You gave them hope, Justin. That's more than anyone's done in centuries." Their eyes locked, and the air between them thickened. Justin's hand found hers, his thumb brushing her knuckles. Her skin was warm, almost electric, and he felt the pull of her presence, a gravity he couldn't resist. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said, his voice low. Zoraya's lips parted, and she leaned in, her breath warm against his cheek. "You're more than you know," she whispered. For a moment, they stood on the edge of something unspoken, their hands intertwined, the city's hum echoing their racing pulses. A drone chime broke the spell, signaling an incoming transmission. Zoraya pulled back, her expression reluctant but focused. "Nexus has detected Zoran scouts probing the shields," she said. "We need to move." Justin nodded, his heart still pounding from their nearness. They returned to the console, pulling up tactical displays. The map showed Zoran skiffs circling the city's perimeter, testing for weaknesses. Justin traced a path along the eastern ridge, his earthborn instincts kicking in. "We can ambush them here," he said. "Hit fast, disrupt their plans." Zoraya's eyes gleamed with approval. A bold move. The Croth will respect it. They coordinated with the factions, assigning roles. The Illyrians would monitor Nexus's systems, the Croth would lead the ground assault, and Justin and Zoraya would strike from the flanks. As they briefed the leaders, Justin felt a shift. He was no longer just an archaeologist, but a commander, his voice carrying weight. Gorith clapped a heavy hand on Justin's shoulder, nearly knocking him over. "You fight like a Croth, human. Don't disappoint." Lyrian offered a nod, her translucent face unreadable. "We will uphold our end. Do not fail us." Varkes lingered, his silence ominous, but he joined the preparations, his warriors grudgingly following. Justin exchanged a look with Zoraya, her steady gaze reinforcing his resolve. They armed themselves, Justin taking an energy lance, its weight familiar now. Zoraya checked her own weapon, her movements precise, but she paused to adjust Justin's grip, her fingers lingering on his. "Stay sharp," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I need you in one piece." He smiled, warmth spreading through him. "Same goes for you." As they moved to the temple's exit, the city's lights pulsed brighter, as if Nexus itself was rallying behind them. The factions assembled outside, their differences set aside for now, united under Justin's leadership. The jungle loomed ahead, alive with the promise of battle, and Justin felt Zoraya's hand brush his one last time, a silent vow to face the storm together. The air in the temple's lower chambers was cool and heavy, laced with the faint metallic tang of ancient machinery. Justin and Zoraya descended a spiral staircase carved from obsidian, its steps worn smooth by eons of unseen footsteps. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins, casting a ghostly blue light that danced across Zoraya's purple skin, making her seem almost ethereal. Her silver hair swayed with each step, and her emerald eyes were sharp, scanning the shadows for threats. Justin clutched his energy lance, its faint hum a steady companion, though it did little to ease the knot of unease in his chest. Nexus had summoned them to the crypt, a hidden vault beneath the city, to face the trial of the crypt, a final test to secure the heart of Zirian before the Zorons could breach the city's defenses. "This place feels alive," Justin said, his voice echoing softly in the cavernous space. He glanced at Zoraya, noting the tension in her posture. "What exactly are we walking into?" Zoraya's lips pressed into a thin line. "The crypt is Nexus's deepest sanctum. It tests the Guardian's resolve, not just physically, but mentally. Kale faced it once and barely survived." Justin's grip tightened on the lance. "Great. No pressure, then." She paused, turning to face him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Her touch was warm, grounding him amidst the alien strangeness. "You've come this far, Justin. Whatever the crypt throws at us, we'll face it together." Her words steadied him, and he managed a small smile. "Together." "Got it." They reached the bottom of the staircase, where a massive door loomed, its surface etched with swirling glyphs that seemed to writhe under the light. Zoraya placed her hand on a central panel, and the door groaned open, revealing a vast chamber shrouded in darkness. As they stepped inside, the floor illuminated, revealing a labyrinth of floating platforms suspended over a seemingly endless void. Each platform glowed with faint runes, and the air was thick with a low, resonant hum that vibrated in Justin's bones. Nexus's voice filled the chamber, its tone solemn. Guardian, the trial of the crypt begins. To claim the heart, you must navigate the labyrinth and confront the shadows within yourself. Only truth will unlock the path. Justin exchanged a glance with Zariah, her expression a mix of determination and worry. Shadows within myself, he muttered. Sounds like a bad therapy session. She squeezed his arm, her touch lingering. Stay focused. I'm right here. They stepped onto the first platform, and the labyrinth shifted, platforms rearranging with a grinding clatter. A path formed, leading to a distant pedestal where a crystalline orb pulsed with light, the key to the heart. But as they moved forward, the air grew colder, and whispers echoed from the void, indistinct but chilling. The first challenge came swiftly. A platform ahead flickered, and a holographic figure materialized. Justin's father, his face etched with the disappointment Justin remembered from childhood. You're a failure, the figure said, its voice cutting deep. Always chasing dreams, never good enough. Justin froze, his breath catching. The word stung, reopening old wounds. Zariah's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his. It's not real, she said softly. It's testing you. Don't let it win. He nodded, forcing himself to move. You're wrong, he said to the hologram, his voice trembling but firm. I've made my own path. The figure dissolved, and the platform stabilized, allowing them to proceed. The labyrinth grew more treacherous, platforms tilting or vanishing beneath their feet. Zariah moved with agile precision, guiding Justin through narrow gaps, her hand brushing his back to steady him. At one point, she leaped across a wide chasm, landing gracefully, then turned to catch him as he followed. Their bodies pressed close for a moment, her warmth a stark contrast to the crypt's chill, and Justin's heart raced, not just from the danger. You're getting the hang of this, she said, her breath warm against his ear. He grinned, despite the tension. Only because you're here. The next challenge was harder. A new hologram appeared, Zariah, but not as she stood beside him. This version was broken, her body bloodied, her eyes lifeless. You failed me, the hologram whispered. You let me die. Justin's stomach churned, the image searing into his mind. He reached for the real Zariah, needing to feel her presence. She was there, solid and alive, but her face was pale, the vision shaking her too. It's a lie, she said, her voice fierce. We're stronger than this. He clung to her words, stepping forward to confront the hologram. I won't let that happen, he declared. I'll protect her. I'll protect Zirian. The hologram shattered, and a new path opened, but the weight of the vision lingered. The labyrinth's challenges grew more intense, testing Justin's fears of inadequacy and loss. Platforms collapsed, forcing them to cling to each other, their hands locked as they swung across gaps. At one point, a swarm of holographic drones attacked, their energy bolts sizzling through the air. Zariah unleashed a wave of energy from her hands, scattering them, while Justin used his lance to deflect a stray shot, their movements synchronized like a dance honed by trust. As they neared the pedestal, the final challenge emerged. The void itself seemed to solidify, forming a mirror-like surface that reflected Justin, not as he was, but as a broken man, haunted by failure. You can't do this, the reflection said. You know, Guardian. You'll doom them all. Justin's knees buckled, the doubt he'd buried surging to the surface. Zariah stepped beside him, her hand cupping his face, forcing him to meet her gaze. Her touch was electric, her eyes blazing with conviction. Listen to me, she said, her voice cutting through the reflection's taunts. You're not that man. You're the one who saved me, who united the factions. You're my guardian. Her words ignited something within him. He turned to the reflection, his voice steady. I choose to be here. I choose to fight. For Zirian. For her. The mirror cracked, and the void parted, revealing the pedestal in full. They approached together, the orb's light bathing them in warmth. Justin reached out, but hesitated, glancing at Zariah. "What if I'm not ready?" he asked, vulnerability creeping into his voice. She stepped closer, her body inches from his, her hand resting on his chest. "You are," she said, her voice soft but certain. "I see it in you, Justin. Strength, courage, heart." Their eyes locked, and the crypt's hum seemed to fade, leaving only the rhythm of their breaths. Justin's hand covered hers, feeling the pulse beneath her skin, and he leaned in, drawn by the intensity of her gaze. Her lips parted, and for a heartbeat, they were on the verge of closing the distance, the air between them charged with unspoken desire. Nexus's voice broke the moment, resonant and urgent. "Guardian, claim the orb to complete the trial." Justin exhaled, stepping back reluctantly. He grasped the orb, and a surge of energy coursed through him, the crypt trembling as the platforms realigned. The void dissolved, replaced by a clear path back to the chamber's entrance. The orb pulsed in his hands, its light syncing with the temple's walls, a sign the heart was now within reach. Zariah's smile was radiant, her purple skin glowing under the orb's light. "You did it," she said, her voice thick with pride. She moved closer, her hand brushing his cheek, and this time, she didn't pull away. "I knew you would." Justin's heart pounded, her touch igniting a warmth that rivaled the orb's. "Couldn't have done it without you," he said, his voice low. He wanted to say more, to tell her how her faith made him feel unbreakable, but the words caught in his throat. She leaned in, her forehead touching his, their breaths mingling. "We're not done yet," she whispered, but her tone held a promise that sent a shiver through him. The crypt's walls pulsed faster, and Nexus spoke again. "The heart is accessible, but the Zorons approach. Prepare for the final stand." Justin nodded, still holding the orb, its weight a reminder of the stakes. Zariah's hand slipped into his, their fingers intertwining, and they turned toward the exit. The trial had tested his soul, but her presence had been his anchor, and now, with the heart in their grasp, they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. As they ascended the staircase, the temple's light seemed to burn brighter, echoing their resolve. The crypt had stripped Justin bare, but it had also forged him anew, and with Zariah by his side, he felt ready to claim his destiny as Zirian's guardian. The city of Zirian thrummed with a restless energy, its bioluminescent spires casting a kaleidoscope of light across the jungle's edge. Justin stood atop the temple's highest balcony, the crystalline orb from the crypt pulsing in his hands, its warmth syncing with the city's heartbeat. Zariah was beside him, her purple skin aglow under the twilight, her silver hair whipping in the wind. Her emerald eyes scanned the horizon, where a storm of dark shapes loomed. Draxian warships, mechanical monstrosities that dwarfed the Zoran skiffs. The air crackled with the scent of ozone and impending battle, and Nexus's voice echoed in their minds, urgent and clear. The Draxians approach. "Guardian, the heart must be protected at all costs." Justin's grip tightened on the orb, his energy lance slung across his back. "Draxians?" he asked, his voice steady despite the dread coiling in his gut. "I thought the Zorons were our biggest problem." Zariah's jaw clenched, her gaze fixed on the approaching fleet. "The Zorons are scavengers. The Draxians are destroyers. A hive mind of machines. They've hunted Nexus's power since the Great War. If they take the heart, Zirian falls." He nodded, her resolve fueling his own. "Then we stop them. Together." They descended to the war room, where the factions, Illyrians, Kroth, and even the reluctant Zorons, awaited. The holographic map showed the Draxian fleet encircling the city, their ships like jagged scarabs, bristling with weapons. Lyrian, the Illyrian leader, spoke first, her translucent skin flickering with nervous light. "Our sensors detect a central command ship. Destroy it, and the hive mind falters." Gorith, the Kroth warlord, slammed a fist on the table, his obsidian hide gleaming. We crush them. My warriors are ready. Varkes, the Zoran leader, sneered but nodded. We fight, human. But if you fail, we all burn. Justin met their gazes, his voice firm. We won't fail. Nexus has unlocked the city's arsenal. We hit the command ship hard and fast. Illyrians, you'll jam their signals. Kroth, you lead the ground assault. Zorons, your skiffs will draw their fire. Zoraya, and I will infiltrate the command ship and shut it down. The factions agreed, their unity fragile but holding. Zoraya's hand brushed Justin's, her touch a quiet promise. We'll need to move quickly, she said. The Draxians don't negotiate. They arm themselves, Justin strapping on a sleek energy gauntlet that pulsed with Nexus's power, while Zoraya wielded a twin-bladed staff, its tips glowing with lethal energy. As they boarded a stealth skiff, their eyes met, and she leaned in, her lips grazing his cheek. Stay alive, she whispered, her breath warm against his skin. He grinned, heart racing. You too. The skiff launched, cloaked by Illyrian tech, weaving through the Draxian fleet's barrage. Explosions lit the sky as Kroth cannons roared below, and Zoran skiffs darted like hornets, drawing fire. The command ship loomed ahead, a colossus of black metal, its surface crawling with drones. Justin piloted the skiff, dodging energy beams, while Zoraya hacked into its systems, her fingers flying over a holographic interface. There, she said, pointing to a maintenance hatch. That's our way in. They crashed through the hatch, the skiff scraping against the ship's hull. Inside, the corridors were a maze of cold steel, lit by flickering red lights. Drones patrolled, their sensors whirring, but Zoraya's energy blast dispatched them, their husks sparking on the floor. Justin followed, his gauntlet humming, its power amplifying his strikes. They moved in sync, her grace complementing his determination, their shared glances a silent vow to survive. The ship's core was a cavernous chamber, dominated by a towering neural matrix, a pulsing web of circuits that controlled the hive mind. At its center stood the Draxian Overmind, a humanoid construct with a featureless face, its body woven from liquid metal. Its voice was a grating chorus, echoing from every surface. You cannot stop progress. The heart belongs to us. Justin stepped forward, the orb glowing brighter in his hands. Zirian's not yours to take. The Overmind lunged, its limbs morphing into blades. Zoraya met it first, her staff clashing against its attacks, sparks flying. Justin flanked it, his gauntlet unleashing a shockwave that staggered the construct. They fought as one, dodging its relentless strikes, but the Overmind adapted, its blades slicing closer with each pass. Zoraya took a hit, a blade grazing her side, and she stumbled, blood staining her robe. Justin's heart lurched. Zoraya, he shouted, diving between her and the Overmind. He blocked a strike with his gauntlet, the impact jarring his bones, and countered with a blast that sent the construct reeling. She regained her footing, her eyes fierce despite the pain. I'm fine, she gasped. Focus on the matrix. Justin nodded, sprinting toward the neural web, while Zoraya kept the Overmind at bay. He plunged the orb into the matrix's core, and Nexus's voice surged through him. Link established. Guardian, you may interface with the Draxian hive mind. The world blurred, and Justin's mind connected to the Overmind's network, a storm of cold, mechanical logic. He saw the Draxians' plan to assimilate Nexus, strip Zirian bare, and spread their dominion across the stars. But beneath their unity was a flaw, a need for purpose. Drawing on his human empathy, Justin projected a message through the link. You seek power, but Zirian offers more. Join us, share its knowledge, or be destroyed. The Overmind froze, its blades halting mid-strike. Zoraya lowered her staff, watching as the construct's face flickered, processing Justin's words. For a moment, silence gripped the chamber, the matrix's hum the only sound. Then the Overmind spoke, its voice softer, almost curious. You offer coexistence? Justin held his ground, the orb blazing in his hands. Yes, but if you fight, we end you. The construct hesitated, then stepped back, its blades retracting. "We will consider. Withdraw for now." The matrix dimmed, and the ship's drones powered down, their red lights fading. Outside, the Draxian fleet retreated, their ships vanishing into the stars. Justin exhaled, the orb's light softening, and turned to Zariah. She was leaning against a wall, her hand pressed to her side, but her smile was radiant. "You talked down a hive mind," she said, her voice laced with awe. "I didn't think it was possible." He rushed to her, his hands hovering over her wound. "You're hurt. We need to get you back." She shook her head, stepping closer, her hand cupping his face. "I'm alive because of you," she said, her eyes locking onto his. The air between them thickened, charged with the intensity of their survival. Justin's fingers brushed her cheek, tracing the curve of her jaw, and she leaned into his touch, her breath hitching. Without a word, he closed the distance, their lips meeting in a kiss that felt like a supernova. Time slowed, the world narrowing to the warmth of her mouth, the softness of her skin, the rhythm of their heartbeats syncing with the city's pulse. Her hands slid into his hair, pulling him closer, and he deepened the kiss, tasting the salt of her sweat and the promise of something unbreakable. They pulled back, breathless, their foreheads touching. "I've wanted to do that since the jungle," Justin admitted, his voice rough. Zariah's laugh was soft, her eyes sparkling. "Took you long enough." Nexus's voice interrupted, calm but urgent. "Guardian, the heart is secure. Return to the temple to stabilize the city." Justin helped Zariah stand, his arm around her waist as they navigated the ship's corridors. The skiff was damaged but functional, and they piloted it back to Zirian, the city's spires glowing like beacons in the night. The factions greeted them, their cheers echoing through the streets. Gorith's booming approval, Lyrian's quiet nod, even Varkis's grudging respect. At the temple, Justin placed the orb in the heart's chamber, a vast dome where energy swirled like a galaxy. The city stabilized, its shield strengthening, its systems fully online. Zariah stood beside him, her wound bandaged, her presence a steady flame. She took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his, and they watched as the heart pulsed, a testament to their victory. "The Draxians may return," she said, her voice thoughtful, "but we've shown them we're not weak." Justin squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of their shared journey. "Let them come. We'll be ready." They stepped onto the balcony, the city sprawling below, alive with light and promise. Zariah leaned against him, her warmth a quiet anchor, and Justin felt a surge of certainty. The battle was won, but the war wasn't over, and with her by his side, he was ready for whatever lay ahead. The city of Zirian shimmered under a violet dawn, its spires weaving light into the jungle's emerald canopy. Justin stood in the heart's chamber, the crystalline orb now fused with the central dais, its pulse a steady rhythm that echoed through the city's veins. Zariah was at his side, her purple skin glowing softly, her silver hair catching the morning's hues like spun starlight. Her emerald eyes held a quiet pride as she surveyed the chamber, where holographic displays flickered with reports of the city's restored systems. The Draxians' retreat had secured Zirian's safety, but the factions' fragile alliance and the looming threat of future conflicts demanded a new path forward. Justin adjusted the energy gauntlet on his wrist, its faint hum a reminder of his role as guardian. "So, we've saved the city," he said, his voice carrying a mix of relief and uncertainty. "What now?" Zariah's lips curved into a gentle smile, her hand brushing his. "Now we rebuild. Zirian was once a beacon of unity. It can be again, with you leading the way." He met her gaze, the weight of her faith anchoring him. "I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. Leading factions, rebuilding a planet. I'm just an archaeologist." She stepped closer, her hand resting on his chest, her touch warm through his tunic. "You're more than that, Justin. You faced the crypt, united enemies, and stopped the Draxians. You're the guardian Zirian needs." Her words stirred a resolve deep within him, and he covered her hand with his, feeling the pulse of her skin. "Only because you were with me," he said, his voice low. "I couldn't have done any of it without you." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the chamber's hum faded, leaving only the space between them. They turned to the console, reviewing Nexus's updates. The Illyrians had begun cataloging the archives, their translucent forms moving like ghosts through the temple's halls. The Croth were fortifying the city's defenses, their massive frames hauling energy cannons into place. Even the Zorons, under Varkes' grudging command, contributed, their skiffs patrolling the skies. Nexus's voice resonated, calm and authoritative. "Guardian, the city is stable, but its future depends on unity. The factions await your guidance." Justin nodded, his mind racing with plans drawn from Earth's history, diplomacy, trade, shared goals. "We'll form a council," he said, tracing the holographic map. "Each faction gets a voice, but we set ground rules. No more fighting over the heart. We share its power to rebuild." Zoraya's approval was palpable, her shoulder brushing his as she leaned in. "A bold plan. The Illyrians will support it, and the Croth respect strength. Varkes will be the challenge." He grinned, her closeness sparking warmth in his chest. "I've handled worse. Let's call them in." The great hall was prepared, its starry ceiling casting a serene glow over the assembled leaders. Lyrian stood with quiet dignity, her light-veined skin shimmering. Gorith loomed like a mountain, his ember eyes narrowed but attentive. Varkes slouched against a pillar, his scarred face a mask of skepticism. Justin took the center, Zoraya at his side, her presence a steady flame. "Zirian survived because we fought together," Justin began, his voice carrying across the hall. "But survival isn't enough. We can make this planet a home again, a place where knowledge, strength, and even ambition find balance. I propose a council. Each of you represent your people, and we govern as equals." Lyrian inclined her head. "The Illyrians agree. Knowledge thrives in unity." Gorith crossed his arms, a low rumble in his throat. "If the council respects strength, the Croth will join. But we watch you, human." Varkes' eyes glinted with calculation. "And what do the Zorons gain? Power shared is power weakened." Justin held his gaze, unflinching. "You gain a future. Fight us, and you lose everything. Join us, and your people thrive." The hall was silent, tension thick as Varkes weighed his options. Finally, he nodded, a grudging concession. "We'll try your council. For now." The agreement was sealed with a pulse of light from the heart, Nexus acknowledging the pact. The factions dispersed to their tasks, leaving Justin and Zoraya alone in the hall. The weight of leadership settled on him, but her presence made it bearable. "You're a natural," she said, her voice warm with pride. She stepped closer, her hand sliding up his arm, her touch igniting a familiar spark. "Zirian's lucky to have you." He turned to her, his hand finding her waist, pulling her gently closer. "I'm the lucky one," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Her lips parted, and she leaned in, her breath warm against his. "You made it easy," she whispered, her eyes flickering with something deeper than gratitude. The space between them vanished, and they kissed, a slow, searing connection that felt like the city's pulse flowing through them. Her hands slid to his shoulders, her fingers digging in as she pressed herself closer, her warmth enveloping him. Justin deepened the kiss, tasting the sweetness of her lips, the moment a quiet rebellion against the chaos they'd faced. Time seemed to pause, the hall's starry light wrapping them in a cocoon of their own making. When they parted, breathless, Zoraya's smile was radiant, her purple skin flushed with a soft glow. "We should do that more often," she teased, her voice husky. He laughed, his heart lighter than it had been in weeks. "Deal." They stepped onto the balcony, the city sprawling below, alive with activity. The Illyrians' research drones hummed through the streets, the Croth's laughter echoed from training grounds, and Zoran skiffs patrolled the skies, their lights weaving patterns against the dawn. Justin felt a surge of hope. This was their new beginning, a chance to rebuild what had been lost. Zoraya leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder, her silver hair tickling his cheek. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her voice soft. He wrapped an arm around her, feeling the rhythm of her breathing. "That this feels right. The city, the factions, us." She tilted her head to look at him, her eyes bright with possibility. "Us," she echoed, her hand finding his. "I like the sound of that." They stood in silence, watching the city awaken, until Nexus's voice broke the moment, its tone unusually gentle. "Guardian, the heart requests your presence. A final protocol awaits." Justin exchanged a glance with Zariah, her nod encouraging. They returned to the heart's chamber, where the dais glowed brighter, its energy swirling like a miniature galaxy. Justin placed his hand on the console, and a hologram of Kale appeared, not the warrior from the archives, but a serene figure, his eyes kind. "Guardian," Kale's hologram said, his voice warm, "you've honored my legacy. Zirian is yours now, to shape as you see fit. Protect it, as I could not." Justin felt Zariah's hand tighten in his, her emotions raw. "Thank you," he said to the hologram, his voice steady. "We'll make you proud." The hologram faded, and the heart pulsed, sealing the protocol. Nexus spoke again. "The city is fully yours, Guardian. Led well." Zariah turned to Justin, her eyes glistening. "Kale would have liked you," she said, her voice thick. "He'd have seen what I see, a man worth following." Justin pulled her close, their bodies fitting together like pieces of a long-lost puzzle. "I'm just glad you see it," he said, his lips brushing her forehead. Her warmth, her strength, her faith, they were his anchor, his reason to keep going. They left the chamber, hand in hand, and stepped into the city's heart, where the factions had gathered for a ceremonial dawn. The Illyrians sang, their voices like wind through crystal. The Kroth raised their weapons in salute, and the Zorons, for once, stood silent, their presence a grudging respect. Justin addressed them, his voice carrying over the crowd, outlining a vision of unity, innovation, and strength. As he spoke, Zariah stood beside him, her presence a quiet power. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Justin knew this was more than a city, more than a mission. It was a home, a future, built on the bond they'd forged through trials and triumphs. The ceremony ended, and the crowd dispersed, leaving them alone under the spires. Zariah pulled him into a quiet alcove, her hands framing his face. "We did it," she said, her voice a mix of awe and joy. "We saved Zirian." He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise sealed in the city's light. "We're just getting started," he murmured against her lips. They stood together, the jungle's song blending with the city's hum, their hands entwined, ready to face whatever challenges the stars might bring.